Psychologists. What's the most interesting case you've worked on? Story 1. Fellow mental hospital patient. I am, or rather was, depressive, but in a closed psychiatric facility on 2 occasions. Once, this was because I had myself committed because was feeling like unaliving myself, and once because there wasn't any space in any other kind of clinic, for 4 weeks total. So I have a few stories that fit this. My roommate watched me brush my teeth on one occasion. While I'm doing this, I realize that he's staring at me. I try to ignore it. Then I realize he's staring at my toothbrush. He then tells me, "You shouldn't stick your lightsaber in your mouth." Okay then. There was a former soldier with PTSD that shared a room with me for a few days. I slept with earplugs during this time because he snored. So I only heard this story from fellow patients, and I'm not sure it wasn't exaggerated. But something close to it must have happened because I did see the destruction afterward. Guy with PTSD can't sleep, so he goes to the duty nurse for sleep meds. Duty nurse at the time was a major jerkwad. Not because she wouldn't give you meds if you asked. After all, she's more qualified than you to decide whether you should be given something or not, but because she treated you like an 8-year-old when you did ask. And not everyone in that facility had the mental faculties of an 8-year-old, thank you very much. Anyway, she tells him that he can't have sleeping meds. He should try and sleep without them first. So the guy starts pacing up and down in the hallway. She comes and tells him that he needs to go to sleep and that he's disturbing other patients, but he ignores her. She grabs him by the arm, and the guy completely flips, breaks the nurse's arm, and tosses her into a wall, beats up 2 more hospital staff and 2 policemen that the hospital staff called to the scene. Then the head doctor of the station gets called in. He was off shift when this happened. Goes up to the guy, telling him something about having a drink with an old comrade, and gives the guy one of those plastic medicine things that look like a shot glass with a massive dose of diazepam or some such. He drinks it and eventually keels over. Again, don't know if it actually went down like this, but I do know the nurse with a broken arm was fired for mistreatment of patients, and the hallway looked like it had been the site of a serious fight. The staff was cleaning bloodstains the next morning. The handrails had been ripped out of the wall. Another piece of drywall somewhere looked like someone had been thrown through it. I slept through the whole thing thanks to earplugs. That wouldn't have been me. I can sleep through a lot, but if someone's just tearing up the room next to me, I'm gonna wake up. And this soldier, was he a super soldier? Did he have some kind of Captain America super serum running through his veins to cause all that destruction? Was he on any other kind of medication? Story 2. One patient took out his dentures and put them in the dishwasher to clean them. When told this wasn't a good idea, he cleaned them over the water fountain instead. A different time we got to go out, someone else went and told the hospital staff afterward that they tried to jump in front of a bus. I did no such thing and was feeling well enough that I had absolutely no inclination to do so at the time. I still got 2 hours of one-on-one therapy with a head doctor who kept telling me that they could only treat me if I was truthful with them. Blah, blah, blah. The other patient eventually admitted to lying, luckily. Girl kept spitting water at me over dinner and splashing me with it. Eventually, I got fed up and dumped a carafe with several liters worth of water on her. Another patient is like, "Hey, wet t-shirt contest." Staff was not amused because they had to clean up the mess. Someone dumped water into every bed on the station. Not a little bit of water either, but enough to soak them all. No one ever figured out who it was. I had the theory that this was because whoever had done it couldn't remember having done it and was therefore unable to give him or herself away. Went to step into some elevator at one point. Was frantically waved off by a doctor standing inside. Standing inside with the doctor, I only got one glance as the elevator door closed, with someone who'd attempted to slit his throat but bungled the attempt. From the amount of blood, it looked to me like he should have been lying on a stretcher. No idea what was actually going on there. That image won't leave my mind in a hurry. Had a woman, married 10 years older than me, and in there because of postpartum depression, hit on me. It got so obnoxious that the doctors transferred her to a different ward so we wouldn't meet anymore. There was one of those sliding fire gates that could be shut by pressing a button that could seal off part of the station, a part that was used for daytime activities and no one slept in. During the night, 2 manic patients were wandering around because they couldn't sleep because that happens when you're manic, and one patient shut the other behind the fire door. The patient that was shut in started yelling, "Help! Help!" in this really eerie voice that convinced other patients the place was haunted. Oh yeah, that's what you want. People who are struggling with mental health having to deal with voices. We got a cornucopia of bad behavior and just no way to deal with it right here. I hope all these people got the help they needed. Also, the one where everybody's bed got soaked with water. How did they do this undetected? Do they not have cameras monitoring these areas? Are we dealing with another superpowered individual who's based on water? Story 3. Some of the saner patients, when we were close to getting released, got permission to go watch a movie at the local theater. We came back home at 11 p.m., and as we walked in, someone made a really good joke, so we were all laughing our butts off. Night security guard sees us trying to get into the elevator and comes running. "What are you doing here?" Me. "We're patients from the psych ward." Yeah. We ended up basically getting held by the security guard until some hospital staff came along and confirmed we said who we were. We had a lot of fun pretending to actually be insane in the meantime, asking the security guard whether it was normal to be hearing voices and telling him hotel service sucked in this place, and whether this was an airport, and at what time the next flight to Timbuktu would leave, etc., etc. I think he was glad to be rid of us at the end. The hospital staff was not amused. But then this wasn't the first thing like this, because a few of us eventually decided, we're already in the nut house. This is our chance to do crazy stuff and get away with it, because everyone already thinks we're insane. Doctor later told me that this type of behavior is called cathartic mania. Might not be the official term, I'm German, and happens to a decent fraction of patients in the process of recovering from a depression. Basically means you show manic behavior for a short period after recovering from a depression, but this goes away pretty quickly. I would say if someone doesn't believe you're crazy by your behavior, that would be good news for your recovery. I think I also kind of understand that cathartic mania situation. I think you kind of feel frustrated because your freedoms are limited. It's like renting a house with a pool and using the pool because you paid for it. You're in the nut house? Go nuts. Story 4. I've had my fair share of mental hospital visits from age 15 to 21. I've seen a whole lot from adolescent units and adult units. But my last visit was introduced to a whole new issue these hospitals deal with that I was completely unaware of until now. When a patient has an episode and cannot be restrained, they get a shot. Patient slang for this is booty juice, and it's usually a sedative administered by injection on the butt. One night, a girl, 18 years old, one of the youngest in the unit, decided since she couldn't sleep, she was going to walk into the hallway after lights out and cause a scene. This was not the first time she was on issue. She was always finding some way to bother the staff, no matter what unit she was in, no matter what time of day it was. But this time, she was intentionally raising hell in hopes of getting this sedative injected so she could sleep. Maybe it's my fear of needles or lack of understanding when it comes to the mind of an addict, but to purposely cause a fight or throw a tantrum just to be shot with a sedative was beyond something my mind was able to understand. And other patients soon followed suit, talking about how if they can't sleep, they'll just make sure they get injected with that sedative, or how they would enjoy it. So getting booty juiced was something they would want. It blew my mind. It's an unfortunate story of gaming the system, but it speaks to how we view mental care in this country. It's like the saying, when all you have is a hammer, every problem seems like a nail. If the only tool you have available is a needle shot, you're gonna create addicts. Story 5. So this happened on my psychiatry rotation in medical school. Recently graduated, but haven't started residency yet. There was a patient at an inpatient psychiatric facility for self-unaliving ideation. She constantly insisted that she had a mass on her breasts and demanded to be physically examined only by male doctors. When the psychiatrist I was rotating under declined to perform a physical exam, she asked me to do it during my daily patient interview. I also declined the physical exam, but had a bit of a hunch to check her medical records. It turned out she had an ultrasound done a week before that found only normal breast tissue without masses. However, apparently this lady had frequented many doctors' offices with various complaints of an unspecified nature and would usually focus on breasts or vaginal complaints when she visited male physicians' offices. We diagnosed her with factitious disorder, formerly known as Munchausen syndrome, and histrionic personality disorder. It seems her goal was mostly attention from medical professionals. She had lots of issues, but we also had to be careful to make sure we weren't fishing for a lawsuit. Patients like her are why doctors document everything meticulously. And on this issue, I really feel for the doctors this time. It's a fine line between someone that's trying to scam somebody into a lawsuit and someone who has real issues that need to be addressed. I don't know where the self-unaliving comes in. Is there a reason she couldn't be seen by only female doctors? Or would that lead to a lawsuit as well? Story 6. Cognitive neuroscientist, neuropsychologist here. I don't do therapy, but I work in research with individuals who suffer from body integrity dysphoria, formerly known as body identity integrity disorder, who usually have an intense desire to amputate a limb, be paralyzed, or blind. One guy contacted me once telling me he has an intense desire to become tetraplegic, paralyzed from the neck down, and if I could help him. Unfortunately, I couldn't, since there's no cure yet, and we don't provide services for them to become, well, disabled. Story 7. I'm a psychotherapist. Read therapist with a master's degree, not a PhD. Worked with a schizophrenic gentleman years ago who could answer questions only in the form of pun, play on words, or all-out jokes. You knew he was having a bad day when his jokes were off color or straight up lewd. He was doing well when the jokes were of a PG nature. He told me one of my favorites. Why doesn't North Dakota have a professional football team? Because then Minnesota would want one too. So basically, this person was the Riddler? I remember that most recent movie about the Joker where his laughing condition could be explained with a medical reason. Is this a condition for the Riddler that could be explained with a medical reason? It makes me wonder how many other supervillains have some sort of medically based or psychiatric based reason for their behavior. What medical condition allows you to only talk in riddles and jokes? Story 8. My father was a nurse in a psych ward during his education. He always told me about this one guy who would compulsively drink water 24/7. He would drink so much water that it threatened his health. He was so manic about drinking water that they couldn't let him out of their sight because he would run off and drink water. They even had to follow him into the bathroom to stop him from drinking water from the sinks and toilets. Story 9. I had a friend of mine who had a sleep disorder that allowed him to move around like he's awake. For that, he has to lock all the knives away before sleeping because he's woken up with a knife on his hand before. He's also woken up in a different part of the city and couldn't remember how he got there. I'm not a psychologist, but a friend of mine was in a psychiatric hospital and told me that an 11-year-old there always talked about Satan and that only she knows how he really looks like, etc. Story 10. Working for a few different conspiracy groups and seeing people get into fights over whether it was Satanists or transhumanists who did 9/11. Believe you me, it's hard to keep a straight face when you get told it was bionic super soldiers posing as radical Islamic terrorists. Was this in a psychiatric ward? It sounds like you were just looking at an online forum. I wonder if psychologists read online forums and can instantly name their condition that they're suffering from. He's going down the list going, yep, he's schizophrenic, he's manic depressive, he's got Munchausen's, etc. Story 11. Schizophrenic woman had been trying various medicines for years to manage it. When she turned around 45 or 50, she had a stroke that cured her schizophrenia. Story 12. I worked in a residential facility. One kid had pica. He liked to eat his puke and poop. They gave him crackers to put his poo on to hopefully transition him from poo to crackers. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.